Hi, welcome to another Ask Augustin. Today I'm going to talk about pizzicato. So pizzicato is, I think, a technique that it's easy not to practice enough because you don't encounter it in every piece, and there's never enough time to get just as used to it and comfortable with it as with using the bow. So sometimes I feel like every time I encounter pizzicato I'm kind of relearning it. But there are some basic pointers on pizzicato. The first thing is, if you want to get a pizzicato sound that's quite focused and clear, it's really important that your left hand is pressing down really well, because otherwise you can get a sound that's kind of too fuzzy. In order for it to have a strong core, it's important for the left hand to do its job. Then I like to think of my index finger as like a sort of like trigger or like a hook that grabs the string, and rather than going this way and then coming back side to side, I like to think of it as a circle. This helps me be accurate with this motion, even when it is happening quite fast. I find that a circular motion feels very natural to me. There are many nuances you can find depending on just how you pluck. Not only how hard you pluck, but where you are with your finger. If you're further on the fingerboard, the sound will be different, maybe a bit warmer. You can even do it diagonally. Some people like to use several fingers for plucking. There is this whole technique of actually using your thumb as an anchor, which can be very useful, especially if it's an extended passage and you have the time to do this, because it takes more time to get set up and to go back to normal. Sometimes you just don't have that time, but if you have that time, it can be pretty good. The one problem with it is I find I have less strength this way than when I'm free, basically, to make a bigger gesture. And when you encounter pizzicati in concertos, balance is actually quite tricky, because a pizzicato will never project as much as playing with the bow, because it's not sustained. You only have the attack of the note, but it fades away right away. The second movement of the fourth desire sonata is actually a great passage to practice your pizzicato, because every one of those chords has to be voiced slightly differently. Throughout the entire movement, actually, there's this figuration that keeps repeating over and over. And sometimes these notes are at the bottom of the chord, sometimes they're at the top, sometimes very often actually they're in the middle. And it's quite challenging, but you want to always bring out this line. So not and not, but the middle one. Those are the lower ones, and then middle, upper, lower, middle, upper, and then lower, upper. I mean, it's the middle voice, but it's the highest string you play. And so forth. This transition to arco is so quick that I find it never really worked for me to go like this, because somehow it never felt right. If I instead I'm able to create that connection to using the bow, that it feels like that figuration is still going on. It shouldn't really feel like it's stopping and then restarting. It should feel like a continuation. So that's the thing, that sometimes you are limited in the amount of time you have to prepare pizzicato. I think one of the fastest transitions to pizzicato in the repertoire might be at the end of the Sibelius concerto, when you have all these octaves and suddenly a pizzicato thrown in and you have almost no time to do it. So at this, it becomes an extension of the arco. just at the end, my finger starts extending to pluck, and then I play the down bow. Just something I insert in that transition between up bow and down bow. And that's an example of a pizzicato that has to be played as loud as possible. Really, it feels louder than the notes around it, but it's the only way that it can be heard, because it can be very easily get lost. So I find that it's a pretty tricky passage, because you have all these octaves to deal with, and then this pizzicato thrown in, and if you don't play it strong enough, nobody will even notice that you tried so hard to play that pizzicato. And if you play it really hard, then your violin might be out of tune a little bit. If you really do that pizzicato as loud as you can, so that could lead to problems with the octaves coming up. So there are a lot of challenges there, but it's actually very typical for Sibelius' style to insert quirky things like this, like a sudden pizzicato somewhere. It's what makes Sibelius, so I think it really needs to be heard. So yeah, practice your pizzicato. It's something that's, when you do encounter pizzicato, there's actually a lot of nuance with it. It's not just a question of plucking. There's a way to get the notes really to ring. There are many different nuances and colors you can produce, and in passages with pizzicato chords, the voicing is a big consideration as well. I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time.